What's up YouTube and fellow Nightblades, Griffith here. Today I'm going to be going over a VR solo build for the Nightblade class. Before I get into that, I just want to go over a few things. Firstly, I would like to apologize for not putting out any videos in the last week or so. I've been trying to just enjoy the game while I hang out with my guild. I do plan to try and upload a new build video every day for the remainder of the week. These videos will include builds for tanking, DPSing, and solo plus group PvP. Secondly, it is really hard to make a perfect build in this game as there are so many options to choose from. So with that said, these build videos will contain the toolkit I run as well as some additional skills that can be swapped out upon needing them. There's one add-on I can't recommend enough for this game, and it is Wicked's Outfitter. This add-on allows you to switch between gear and action bar setups on the fly. So the way Wicked's works is, I have my skill set here. I have my toolkit right here for my bow bar. So as you can see, it says up here that this is the DPS bow. Now, if I wanted to quickly switch to my tank one-hand shield, I would come in here, select that, and then hit load. And then just like that, it puts all my tank skills on the bar, and I'm good to go for my action bar. And I can come back here, DPS bow, swaps everything back. This also works for gear setups. So here this says DPS gear, so this is my medium set. If I want to come over to my tank gear, select that, hit equip, and there we go. Now I'm in my tank gear. Quickly, it didn't have to sit there and come into the inventory and click on everything to, and then double check to make sure it's there. I know it's there, and we're ready to go. So back to the DPS gear. Just nice and easy. So that is a demonstration of Wickets. I highly recommend everybody get that. This, like I said, there's so many skills in this game. A lot of them are very situational, but they are very powerful. And you definitely want to be able to swap those out on the fly, and Wicked's Outfitter gives you that capability. You can do everything nice and quick and smooth, and that's that. So the final thing I want to go over is Vampirism. As you guys can see, I am a vampire. I think becoming a vampire is a great choice for any Nightblade as their skills and passives really synergize with our class, which I will go over shortly. I have all the vampire abilities in my toolkit, but I will go over other options for those of you who do not wish to become a vampire. So let's get into the build. Number one is attribute points. So what I've done here is I've just went ahead and put 49 right into health. This is going to give you the health you need to survive several VR dungeon mechanics as well as some of the solo stuff out here. It's just the simple solution, and I would say probably the best one. You can gear for magic and stamina based on what what kind of setup you're running, and this just right away gives you the health you need to survive things. So this is my recommendation. Alright, so let's get into the gear. So right now I'm running 5 medium, 2 light. I've got chest, shoulders, gloves, legs, and boots medium, and helm and belt light. What this does is it gives me the medium, the 5 bonus medium passives, which are 10% increased attack speed, and this one just allows me to sprint basically for less, and decreases the cost of roll dodge, which is nice. And this is going to give me some stam regen and critical strike, increased weapon critical strike from the 5 medium. And then here with the 2 light, the 2 light's going to give me a little bit more spell resist as well as magic recovery and reduced cost of spells. As far as set bonuses go, it takes a bit to get these, to get the set bonuses. You have to craft, you have to research a bunch of traits in each slot before you can get a set bonus applied to that particular slot. So at a later date, probably I'll go over what set bonuses I'm actually going to use for each of these. It's if you find a set bonus spreadsheet, you can tell pretty much what's going to be good for each build. There's not a lot. There's several that are just awful, so you should be able to tell right away that those things aren't going to be good. The Warlock Set, this is a drop set that you can get at VR1 as soon as you hit VR content. I am running this set, and what this does is once per minute, when below 33% magicka, I instantly gain 585 magicka. So I have the neck piece, the 1 ring, and the helm, and this set's it's a good set for VR1, and I might even use this at VR10 depending on what other set bonuses I can get. I'll probably end up with a 5-piece and then 2 3-piece sets. This ring right here, this is my flame resist ring. If you are a vampire and you are not a Dunmer, you absolutely need to get one of these. This reduces your damage debuff to fire attacks from being a vampire from 50% to 25%. That is the absolute lowest you can get it. So as a vampire, you cannot get it below 25%. You will always be taking at least 25% more fire damage from attacks than anyone that's not a vampire. Even if you're a Dunmer, but if you're a Dunmer, it's just there passively. If you're not, you need a ring. Or rather a glyph with fire resistance on it. So my weapon set here is bow and dual wield. That is what I'm going to be running for this build. So that is pretty much my gear. 5 medium, 2 light, Warlock 3-piece, fire resistance ring for being a vampire, and bow dual wield. So let's get into these skills. So for my bow bar, I am running Strife, Swallow Soul Morph, Siphoning Strikes, Leeching Strikes Morph, Elusive Mist. This is the first vampire ability that you're going to see, and I pretty much use this just to get around the map. I will explain that shortly. This ability is freaking awesome. So I pretty much never mount because of this. Right here, my 4th ability is Volcanic Rune. This is a fire rune morph from the Mages Guild. This is an amazing AoE CC. You put it on the ground, it has a pretty large radius. When one enemy runs into it, it just knocks pretty much everything around it up into the air and then stuns them for 4 seconds. So massive CC. It costs hardly anything to use. This ability is amazing for taking on groups of enemies. Magnum Shot. You guys saw this in my level 50 1 to 50 builds. This is just great for keeping distance on targets that hit like trucks in melee range. So this is still here. This is just whatever. This is Soul Strike. This is from the Soul Magic skill line here. It does a ton of single target damage, but I'm just messing around with this right now. You could potentially just come into Shadows and put on Consuming Darkness, whichever morph you chose to take. Veil of Blades is my favorite morph for that ability. You could throw that down there. You could put Soul Harvest there. Soul Shred. So you could probably even put Soul Shred there. That would be fine. There's a lot of room, to work with as far as the ultimate here goes. So, and then Elusive Mist. Now this is a vampire. For those of you that do not want to be a vampire, we could take. You could take Dark Cloak, which is the morph to Shadow Cloak. Now, I chose to take this morph over the crit one because I found that removing 3 damage over time effects every time I use this is extremely powerful versus just getting 1 guaranteed crit ability on each usage. I don't really use it that much other than to be defensive, so I'm not really using it as an offensive mechanism for this particular situation. So you could throw that down there. But I do also have it here on my dual wield bars. So basically, you could throw a lot of different things down here. It's pretty much user preference on this one. Like I said, I don't even use this in combat very much. It's just mostly to get around, and I'll show you how I get around with this shortly. Now for the dual wield bar. Here I have Invigorating Drain. This is a morph to one of the vampire abilities. And what this does is it stuns the target for 3 seconds. It deals damage to them and heals me for 150% of the damage dealt and recovers stamina for the same amount. Also, with the morph, it recovers ultimate. So this ability is just crazy. The only downside to this ability is it can only be used basically once per one time per target. So if I'm fighting 2 targets, I can use it once on one and once on the other, and it's got like a massive cooldown of like 2 minutes or something. So most of the mobs are dead before the cooldown drops, and I get to use it again. So freaking awesome ability. Number 2 is Leeching Strikes again. I want to put this on both bars so I don't have to toggle it on when I switch. It just stays toggled. And then I have Dark Cloak, which I synergize with Surprise Attack, which is the Veiled Strike. Basically, if you use Surprise Attack on someone while you're in Dark Cloak, it stuns them. So, as well as gaining the passive bonuses of Shadow Barrier, which is right here, increases armored spell resistance by 1750 for 4 seconds when coming out of stealth or invisibility. So, this is more of a defensive mechanism than it is an offensive. You get tons of spell resistance and armor when you come out of this thing, as well as removing damage over time effects, as well as synergizing with Surprise Attack to get a stun on a target. And then, no surprise here, Blood Craze for the additional healing. Again, this is one of those abilities. Swap it out. You can do whatever you want with it. As many of you know, there's like half the enemies in this game cannot bleed. So this is only effective in certain situations. So you could easily trade this out for something else. And I may even do so at some point in the future. Maybe pick up, Ambush here, which is Teleport Strike Morph. You can switch this out. And as well as Invigorating Drain, if you are not a vampire, you could also switch this out. If you're going to switch this out for anything, I would say switch it out for Strife. This is here because it's a heal, and that's what I'm using it for. It just heals better than Strife. That's why it's here. It also gives me ultimate as well as recovers my stamina. So, and this will pretty much heal you to full. This will heal you and your stamina bar. It will pretty much refresh your entire health pool and your stamina pool on one usage, as well as give you a ton of ultimate. My ultimate here is another vampire ability, Devouring Swarm. This is a morph to the Bat Swarm ability that the vampires get, and what this does is it does 177 magic damage to every enemy around me every second for 5 seconds, and then it heals me for the exact same amount per enemy. So if I'm fighting 3 enemies, then I'm getting almost 600 health every second back because it's healing me for each enemy hit. So this is like incredibly powerful. It does a ton of damage, and it heals me. In PvP, which I know we're not talking about PvP, this is a veteran rank solo build, but in PvP this ability is insane. You just can run into a bunch of people, pop this, and they cannot kill you. So 4 or 5 seconds. So you got a plan to get out of there after that, but for that 5 seconds, you are a god. Again, you can switch this out for anything. You could put Soul Shred, Soul Harvest, Veil of Blades, whatever you wanted. You could switch this out. This is mainly for me defensive for when I'm fighting multiple enemies, and they're these veteran rank mobs. They don't play around. They hit like trucks. So I have this here, kind of as a defensive mechanism. If I wanted another defensive mechanism, because I'm not a vampire, I would take Veil of Blades. So that is about it for the skills. Again, there's several in here that you could really, swap out. You don't have to keep all of these. There's just no perfect build in this game. There's so many different combinations of things, and then there's so many situational things like Expert Hunter. 20% chance on hit to deal an additional 285 magic damage to undead and Daedric enemies for 10 seconds. This is an outstanding ability, and I could probably swap this with Blood Craze for when I'm actually fighting those types of mobs. But obviously, if you're not, then this ability is useless on your bar. If you're not fighting undead or Daedric, there's no reason to have it. So these are things that you guys can message me about if you have a particular thought on an ability and you're not sure if it would work with this build. Send me a message, let me know. It would take me hours and hours to go over every single ability in this game and the usage that it has for this particular build. So I just can't do that. But you guys are welcome to get in touch with me on Tamriel Foundry or in the comments below, whatever. If you guys have an idea, shoot me a link for the build. I'll tell you what I think. But this is my toolkit personally. Again, there's choices for all these vampire abilities if you don't want to be a vampire, but I think Vampire is an amazing choice for a Nightblade. Their passives are incredible. They synergize really well with Nightblades. Their abilities synergize really well with Nightblades. So that is pretty much the toolkit for this particular build. So first of all, I'm going to go ahead and go into a demonstration of how I use Elusive Mist and some of the vampire passives. So here's the vampire skill tree. So we have the 3 abilities, and here are your passives. Savage Feeding. After feeding, your target is off balance and stunned for 3.25 seconds. This one I'm not going to really go into. You don't feed that much. I mean, you may choose to be a vampire that wants to stay in the lower stages of vampirism. Me, I'm either in 3 or 4, so I don't ever really feed. Supernatural Recovery increases magicka and stamina recovery by 10%. This is also, super powerful. That's a lot of magicka and stamina recovery on top of what you're going to be having from your class racials. I mean, from your racials and from your class lines. Blood Ritual. This is just the thing that allows you to turn other players every 7 days. Undeath increases damage mitigation when a player is below 50% health. Damage mitigation can increase up to 50% as health decreases. Again, this is freaking awesome. So you're taking less damage from whatever percentage, as long as you're below 50% health. You are taking an increased amount of you're having an increased amount of mitigation below 50% health up to 50%. So that is really good. This just increases one of the hits you also get to being a vampire is a hit to your health regeneration. So generally without vampire I'd be at about 40. As you can see here, I'm at 16 because I am stage 4. So as the stage increases, that's what happens. Your abilities cost less, but you lose your health recovery, and that is what happens from the stages from stage 1 to stage 4 of vampirism. So I like to stay stage 4, stage 3 because the vampire abilities cost almost nothing to use, and I don't really need this health recovery when I have so many abilities on my bar that heal. So the final ability here is Deathstalker, or Darkstalker, excuse me. Increases movement speed while sneaking and allows player to enter stealth more quickly at night. So I guess this is considered night right now, so let's see. Maybe. Yeah. So you can see how quickly I enter stealth with this passive. And the second bonus to this is the speed, which you can see is really fast. I actually stealth fast, like I move in stealth faster than I walk normally. Or it's about the exact same speed. So, and what I do to move around the map, now, I know several of you have found out that's really annoying to be on a horse. They're very, very quirky, and they get stuck on rocks in the road, like little pebbles in the road very easily. You get knocked off of them literally every time you get hit by a mob. So I don't even use horses generally, unless I'm just trying to not pay attention where I'm going somewhere, and I can just mount up and just hit auto run, and that's going to be my fastest way, because this is an active way to move around the map. You're going to have to constantly press the button. But what I do here is I'll just go into stealth and I'll hit Elusive Mist. Elusive Mist does not break my stealth. So I can be detected shortly when for a short period of time when I use it. So as long as you do not use this like right next to an enemy, you'll be okay. But this allows me to quickly move around, without being seen at all. I'm in stealth right now, so I can run next to these mobs all I want. They're not going to see me. So that's how I utilize, Elusive Mist, is literally just a movement mechanism. I don't really use this in combat very much. I could, but I just don't really have a need for it. You also can't receive healing while you're in it, so it's good as a proactive damage mitigation thing, but if you're trying to use it after you've been hit, it's not the best choice, because then you can't receive heals, so you need to use it before. So let's go over how I kind of approach fights here. So these are VR5 mobs. I'm currently VR7, which none of this really matters that much. Things don't scale very, very crazy at these levels. Like, it's going to be hard no matter, if I get to VR10 and I come back here in full on epic gear, then it might be a little easier. But at this moment, I'm still in VR1 gear. This is pretty much just as much of a challenge as it would be to do VR7 stuff. So let's get Leeching Strikes going. Because I have this movement speed and stealth, it's not really an inconvenience for me to open up with a stealth attack, because I can quickly do it. So that's pretty much how I open up. Is always with a stealth attack. This eliminates one of the targets very quickly, and I can kill the rest of the mobs. That's the biggest problem with the VR content stuff, is everything hits like a truck. So you do not want to be getting hit by multiple mobs constantly, because you just cannot heal through it. And you're going to notice now that my 1 to 50 leveling build was built around AoE. This build is not. AoEing in VR content just does not work. You want to be single targeting. That's the only way to really do this content quickly and efficiently. You could AoE, but because the AoE skills don't hit very hard, it's going to take you twice as long to kill 3 opponents as it would someone who's just going around single targeting all of them. Excuse me, my voice. Ugh. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and get into stealth, and one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I dark cloak so the enemies cannot see me when I go in for my stealth attack, because the sight radius for things like this is pretty large, and you can be seen very easily, because this guy right here, he's facing me now. So he can see me if I get in range of a stealth attack from this girl right here. So I'm going to dark cloak to open. So I just outright killed her. There's invigorating drain, stuns him. So that's a little 2-man pack. I'll go ahead and do a 3-man pack right here to show you guys that. Always pick your weakest target to stealth attack with, so you can hopefully kill them outright, and then you only have 2 targets to deal with. So I'm going to dark cloak, veiled strike. That's going to stun this guy. And I just got trucked, but that's okay. I can devouring swarm. This is going to heal me to full. Dark cloak again. Stun this chick. And now she's dead. Here I'll go ahead and demonstrate devouring swarm since I have it. I'm not even going to open from a stealth attack. That's how strong this ability is. As you can see, my health bar doesn't really move. So as you can see there, even with all this healing stuff on my bar, they still took me down pretty low several times. These mobs hit really hard in veteran content, so there's not much room for error here. And it's more about how you utilize your skills versus what your toolkit really is. I mean, that is important. There are a lot of abilities out there that just aren't useful. So it does have a lot to do with your toolkit as well. So I'll just go ahead and do a couple fights here with my bow bar and show you guys how this works. So that's how I utilize Volcanic Rune to keep enemies locked down, big groups of enemies. Oftentimes I use this for boss battles where they summon adds. I keep that Volcanic Rune down to deal with their adds while I take care of the boss, or whatever else. Sometimes I'll decide to take out the adds first, but either way, that keeps them locked down. So here's a group of 3. So here I'm going to demonstrate Soul Strike. This is going to absolutely melt this dude. And, okay, that was actually kind of weak. But, yeah, he popped a little health potion at the end there to save his life. But this is pretty much my bow bar, so this is the build I have. You know, you don't no more AoE. It just especially as a Nightblade, we are very weak when it comes to AoE. You know, the only thing we really have is drain power, which essentially just buffs other weapon-based AoEs for us, because as a class we just don't get any good AoEs. But for this overworld stuff, there's never more than 3 mobs grouped together, so you know, using drain power isn't that beneficial because you're not getting a huge buff from it. You know, it really only comes into play when you're getting, you know, like 5 mobs with it, you know, or 6 mobs with it, where you're, you know, you're overcharging your weapon damage and just doing tons of damage with it. So it's all single target for VR content. That about wraps it up for this one, guys. I apologize for the cough, I just couldn't get rid of it. And if you guys notice any frame drops during the demonstration portion of the video, I was trying some different settings out and I didn't have time to record that portion of the video again. I will definitely have all that fixed for my next video. One thing I forgot to mention was passives. I am currently VR8 with 220 or so skill points with at least 80 skill points remaining. This gives me plenty of skill points to get every passive in the game that is even remotely useful and still have a ton left over. So that's pretty much what you guys should be aiming for. Alright, so I plan to upload my tank build tomorrow for those of you that are interested in that. Also, I would like for you guys to let me know in the comments below what other content you would like to see once I finish all of these build videos. I would love for this channel to be the #1 Nightblade resource, and if there is something you guys want to see, just let me know. Thanks for watching, everyone. This has been Griffith. See you next time.